So the governor officially closed down the water pods, and this was the site at the Capitol in Lansing yesterday, where about 50 residents went to the Capitol.
Chanting in the streets of Lansing to the steps of the Capitol, the ralliers made their way indoors, where they held their fists high and walked in silence. A quiet walk through the Capitol building, 2 busloads of Flint residents eager to walk into the House chamber and, if there was any question, make their demands known.
We listened in, we waited, and then we said, do your job, open the pods. We let a few chants, and then we came out.
One man taken away by police and later released. The group continued chanting as they left the Capitol.
We're letting them know that despite the fact that it's 4 years into this lead crisis, it is still a crisis. We are still afraid about the contents in our water.
So what can lawmakers do about it?
The legislature can only allocate money and resources to provide those dollars and cents it's going to cost to keep those bottled water facilities open inside the city of Flint, but the governor has total autonomy as it relates to services that's going to be provided for a community such as Flint.
More chants continued outside after a long day of rallying.
Today's rally went well, but I want to see more from the Michigan State. I want to see a lot of our other brothers and sisters stand with us in solidarity and unity, because this isn't just a Flint issue. This is when the state put profit over people.
In Lansing, Elise Ramey, ABC 12 News.
So there you have it. You have about 50 residents, I believe it was, went in about 2 buses from Flint to Lansing. Lansing is the capital of Michigan. And really, they were in the House session, the Michigan State Legislature, saying, no Nestle, water for Flint. No Nestle, water for Flint. Because the governor and the state of Michigan basically decided to let Nestle extract more water from Flint for basically, not Flint, Michigan, from fresh water bodies. Nestle is allowed to extract, I believe it's 400 gallons a minute. 400 gallons a minute. So they're letting Nestle do that for basically no money, but they're closing down the water pods. And the water pods are, this is life or death. Flint is 45% poverty level. 45% poverty level. So the majority cannot afford to go to Walmart or 7-Eleven or whatever and buy cartons and cartons of bottled water themselves. They were depending on the state. And when the governor of Michigan declares that the water is restored, well, if you've been following my reporting the last few days, I posted on Twitter, I posted everywhere. There are people in Flint posting videos where they take water from their sinks and it's brown. Not 3 years ago, 3 days ago. Yet the governor of Michigan is declaring the water restored. And the corporate media, like the fine lady I just played, they don't actually investigate anything. They don't investigate. You know what they do? They just regurgitate what the government tells them. I did a video explaining in detail why the reporting I have done shows that the science that is being used to declare the water restored and normal is highly, highly questionable. Highly questionable. They have only, on the federal level, they have only examined 34 homes. 34 homes they examined to satisfy the EPA's lead and copper rule. And my reporting shows I don't even know if they did follow the EPA's lead and copper rule, because they did nothing to actually confirm whether the homes they were testing were actually connected to lead service lines. According to the EPA's lead and copper rule, you have to verify that you are testing homes. Half of the sample size need to be at least half of the sample size, 50%, need to be homes connected to lead service lines, or the remaining half need to have lead pipes or copper pipes with lead solder. They didn't verify any of that. The federally funded EPA scientists barely followed regulations. And the state used plumbers, I think, for 200 homes to verify, and then the rest they didn't. You have brown water still coming out of people's pipes. Brown water still coming out of people's sink. Yet the governor has decided to shut down the water pods, claiming the people don't need it anymore because they can drink the water. And you know what's going to happen? Because Flint is 45% impoverished, Brandy says, Jordan, you are the only one I've heard cover water poisoning. Thank you. Brandy, I'm doing my best. There are some folks on the ground in Flint, more citizen activist journalists that are covering this, but this is very important. And honestly, I really, really want to get back in the field. I want to get back in the field with a cameraman and equipment to keep the spotlight on Flint. So, that's all I got to say. All I got to say. Bottom line is this. The governor is lying to the people. And it's not the first time he has lied to the people. He actually perjured himself in front of Congress. It came out that he actually knew about the Flint water crisis. He actually knew about the Legionella risk well before he actually said he did. He said that in front of Congress. No accountability. No, that's fine. When a governor lies, who cares, right? And press the share button. Let's get this out. So as the governor ends free water for impoverished, poor people, predominantly African-American, a lot of poor white people too. I'm going to get to Syria. Don't worry, folks. I just want to give you a little reminder on this governor. This is the governor's priorities. He's closing the water pods for impoverished, poisoned people of Flint when the water is not yet safe. He sure didn't have a problem giving massive tax breaks. Michigan governor to cut taxes for corporations while cutting services for the poor and the middle class. This piece is from 2011, so right when he became governor. It looks like Rick Snyder, the Republican governor of Michigan, whose legislation will give, quote, emergency managers carte blanche over Michigan municipalities in the event of, quote, a financial crisis, is lowering taxes on business by raising taxes on the poor and working class. What a humanitarian. Governor Rick Snyder has proposed ending his state's earned income tax credit, cutting a $600 per child tax credit, and reducing credits for seniors, while also cutting funding for school districts by 8 to 10%. At the same time, as the Michigan League for Human Services found, the state's business taxes would be reduced by nearly $2 billion, or 86%. Snyder wants to cut business taxes by 86%, lowering revenue from those taxes from $2.1 billion to approximately $293 million, a drop of $1.8 billion, all during a recession that has Michigan, like so many other states, strapped for cash. To close that gap, personal income taxes would go up from $5.75 billion to $7.5 billion, and the rates on the lowest earners would go up more than rates of the top 1%. So there you see, like Paul Ryan, who the media just gave adoration in his retirement announcement. The media showered Paul Ryan with affection and love. He's such a good family man. He's such a humane public servant. No. Like Paul Ryan, Governor Rick Snyder is a social Darwinist plutocrat who values rich plutocrats and oil executives and yacht owners and bankers more than poor, poisoned people in Flint. Thank you, Laura, for signing up for both Patreon accounts. Mwah! We need more people to do that. Oh, by the way, I have podcasts up at the Patreon. I have video diaries up, and there's going to be a video that goes up, I think, tonight that a lot of you are going to like. Not on my Patreon, somewhere else. So, Flint Mayor Karen Weaver, basically, sources tell me before Governor Snyder announced this, that he was closing down the pods, the mayor tried to object and tried to convince the governor against closing down the pods. And now Governor Snyder has agreed to meet with the mayor. on the closing of the water pods. Governor Snyder has agreed to meet with Mayor Karen Weaver next week, giving her the chance to make the case for resupplying the city with no-cost bottled water in person. A spokesperson for Snyder on Wednesday, April 11th, confirmed the meeting has been scheduled, which Weaver requested Monday, April 9th, after the State Department of Environmental Quality announced it would discontinue payments for water distribution here. So I just want to point out, at a certain point, we need to call the government officials that are doing this by their real names. These are sociopaths. When you have a governor who, by the way, his gross negligence and I think involuntary manslaughter was very largely responsible for the poisoning of the Flint citizens, a governor whose priorities are to give massive tax breaks to corporations and wealthy donors that do not need it, but can't find the money to continue supplying poor, poisoned Americans that he was responsible. Maybe he didn't poison them, but he certainly was responsible for the aftermath. It's more important to this man to basically lick his donor and corporations' anuses. Excuse my French. Than to actually take care of the people you poisoned. What kind of country is that? I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, whatever. First of all, let's say for argument's sake that the water was now safe to drink. It's not, but let's just say for argument's sake it was. Don't you think that until all those lead service lines in the street are replaced, all those lead service lines that were destroyed by the corrosive Flint River that your state agency, Governor Snyder, didn't treat properly with anti-corrosive chemicals, don't you think until all those lead service lines are replaced that you should continue to supply bottled water for free to the residents? Don't you think that the government should actually be covering the health care of these poisoned poor people? Because they're not. I just interviewed Melissa Mays, one of the leading Flint activists. She's a resident. She was here in New York. I interviewed her the other day. You could watch it on this channel. Nobody's paying for her and her family's mountains of medical bills. Same goes for all the other residents I've interviewed in Flint. This is a national disgrace. Honestly, I don't even think they treat people in third world countries this way. Can you imagine? Let me tell you something. I got a very, very good deal. I live on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. If what happened in Flint happened here, we wouldn't have water pods that we have to go to around the city because they'd be delivering them door to door. You want to know why? Because this is a fairly, upper middle class area. Middle class to upper middle class. They'd be delivering the water door to door. But for a poor city, by the way, I'd say 16 to 20% of the residents of Flint do not have public transportation. So they don't even have a way, even if they could afford it, they don't even have a way really. I mean, they don't have cars. So this is a disgrace. It's a disgrace that the mayor of Flint has to lobby this sociopath governor to keep the water coming for poisoned people. And you know what's even more of a disgrace? And I talked about this at length in my Beat the Press podcast, which you could find at, I talked about that at length today. There is zero national media attention on what is going on in Flint right now. Do you know that they shut down highways in Flint yesterday? Some of the protesters? Did you know, if I didn't just show you that they had interrupted a legislative session? I bet you didn't. Thank you, Nicholas. I made the sign myself. It took me a while. I have terrible handwriting. We're doing this kind of, raw style. The media revolution painted in arts and crafts. It's disgusting. CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times and the Washington Post, they're all like drooling and warmongering. I just interviewed Rania Khalek, who is a Middle East journalist. I interviewed her. It went up today, this morning. Go watch that interview. I think it was like a half-hour podcast. She is an expert on Syria and all things. As the media just warmongers with zero evidence. They're saying now, the U.S. officials have confirmed chemical weapons in Syria. Have they confirmed that it was Bashar al-Assad who did it? But anyway, they're warmongering for another war because they can't get enough of war, but they can't be bothered to cover that humanitarian aid to American citizens. You want to talk about humanitarian aid to Syria? How about a humanitarian aid to the citizens of America, poor people in Flint? But we don't want to cover that. We can't be bothered that the sociopath governor in Michigan just shut down the free water pods. We can't be bothered with that. We can't be bothered that poor black people, poor white people, as we speak right now, are all sorts of scared, all sorts of desperate. They had lines of cars wrapped around for blocks as people tried to get in for the last cases of free water. Most of these people don't have the money to go and buy stacks and stacks of bottled water at the grocery store. So they're going to have no choice but to drink from the tap. And that tap, they say, oh, it's fine, they have filters. No. It has been shown that those filters go bad very quickly. It has been shown that those filters actually breed bacteria. It has been shown that those filters do not stop all lead from coming through. And now this sociopath governor and the corporate media who is covering for him, not covering it, but covering it up, are basically saying to the poor people of Flint, good luck. We poisoned you. Figure it out. I don't want to hear about our democracy under attack from Russia. No. Our democracy is under attack from Rick Snyder. Our democracy is under attack from a corrupt corporate media that doesn't cover real news. That's what our democracy is under attack. Fired up today. Our democracy is under attack, frankly, from YouTube, who, frankly, if YouTube and their algorithm wasn't censoring news they don't like, this video would have a lot more views. But do you know that YouTube is actually, their algorithm is making sure that videos, both on-demand videos and live stream, don't actually get delivered to the people who subscribe to channels? Do you know that? That's YouTube is doing that for their advertisers. This is becoming a banana republic. Actually, it is a banana republic.